Yu-Gi-Oh! Has been an ongoing franchise since 1998 and has evolved from a dark manga about a lonely teenage boy who likes board games to one of the most successful trading card games ever released. One of the most diverse ways to enjoy this franchise, however, comes in the form of video games, which have varied mechanics, stories, and way to ogle cool monster designs. So let's take a walk through different kinds of games that exist throughout Yu-Gi-Oh's 20-year history, going from 1998 all the way through to 2021. And let's see exactly how we got here. Yu-Gi-Oh! Dungeon Dice Monsters was released on March 21st, 2001, and the US saw it on February 12th, 2003. Fun fact, in 2001, at this point, Japan has already had 8 Yu-Gi-Oh! Games, and the US has yet to even see a single one, let alone the anime. Dungeon Dice Monsters was first depicted in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Duelist manga Chapter 75 as the hit new game made by a young game designer named Duke Devlin, or Ryuji Otogi for the mango heads out there. It would also appear in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, have its own video game as we were about to discuss, and even get a physical game released that was supported by more than one wave of booster packs. The physical game has become a hot commodity in recent years, although no one really gave it a second thought at the time. Part of this must be because the game is quite complicated and requires some pretty specific counting and tracking of resources. All that being said, this game leverages the familiar keywords of duel monsters, and even uses the same monsters as the card game on top of the monsters invented for Dungeon Dice Monsters in the manga and anime. Notably, one of the monsters invented for this little game would become an OCG-TCG card years later as Orgoth the Relentless. You might recognize this as Duke Devlin's ace monster, so to speak, from the climax of the arc. In this game, we will see a mix of new creatures and familiar ones, and several will also get the spotlight in ways they could not otherwise because their trading card counterpart is just not a worthwhile inclusion in a deck, which is what makes these spin-off games really shine, in my opinion. Promo cards were not included in any international releases of the game, but in Japan they did come with a kind of promotional card. In Japan, your hard-bought copy of Dungeon Dice Monsters also came with 3 full art cards of Dark Magician Girl, using her original art, an alternate art, and a modification of the promo art used for announcing the prize cards for the Dark Duel Story Street Duel Tournament. You would have seen this if you had watched the previous video. These were not legal OCG cards, and they even had custom backs denoting they were from Dungeon Dice Monsters. However, they were not cards for use with the physical Dungeon Dice Monsters game either. Just fun memorabilia, I guess. This is, however, the last time this would happen. Konami would attempt to incite some sales by creating combo carts for some of their games, including Castlevania and Yu-Gi-Oh! Games. And Dungeon Dice Monsters was one of these, sharing with Destiny Board Traveler, but I'll talk about that cart when we actually get to Destiny Board Traveler. Alright, here's the thing. This game has one of the roughest starts to any of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Games, maybe ever, rivaled only by its associated partner in crime, Destiny Board Traveler. There is no tutorial offered at any point in the game, not even a brief text one. The game had a manual that certainly described what all the crests mean, and there were strategy guides sold by Prima Games here in the States, and also one released by V-Jump like the Duel Monsters titles, but no promos, unfortunately. Not even just art cards, just walls of text about move crests. Dungeon Dice Monsters is certainly complex, but mostly in the same way its associated card game is, just in a different context. So let me explain what you're looking at here, just in case you're not familiar. Each dice is either a monster or a support item. The support items are things like treasure chests or first aid kits to restore health. Monsters come in one of 6 colors to represent each type. They can also be between levels 1 and 3. In addition to their summoning crest, which corresponds to their level, the dice can have an arrow representing a move crest, crossed swords representing a fight crest, a shield representing a guard crest, and either a Satan Star or an Angel Bell crest, which denote 2 of the ability cross-currencies monsters can utilize for their abilities. The layout for each monster or item's die faces is displayed on the lower right side of the screen. There's no deck cost for this game, thank God, but you must have the specified number of dice in your pool to initiate a duel. Attack and guard crests give you points in those pools respectively, which allow you to attack creatures or defend against incoming attacks. The move crests add to your move pool, which allow you to move a single space per one crest in the pool. All of these pools are expended upon usage. It is not cumulative over the entire duel. So if you stock too heavy on dice with attack crests or defense crests, but no move crests, you'll never be able to make it to the opposing die master. Making the opposite true, that you might move across the entire board in one go, but never be able to take a swing. Which brings me to the victory condition. Each die master, yours and the opponent's, has 3 hearts, which depletes 1 at a time per attack, no matter how strong the attack is. Monsters have an attack and defense value indicated by the sword and shield in their stats, and in the details screen you'll be able to see if a monster has an ability. Not all of them do. Each turn you choose 3 dice from your pool to roll, and different things occur based on that roll. Any crest other than a summoning crest will add that type of crest to your pool. But rolling 2 summoning crests of the same value, 2 level 1s, 2 level 2s, etc., will allow you to choose one of those monsters to summon. When a monster is summoned, you can choose the way the die unfolds onto the field, and the unfolded die then becomes the walking path for the play area. So choosing strategically advantageous die paths is important. Any player can traverse across any die path, so it's important to think about placement. The one stipulation to this is that any new monster must connect on at least one square to a die path you have previously placed or to your own die master. So no, you can't just immediately rush your opponent by putting a path next to their die master immediately, although that would be very funny. Each monster comes in one of 6 colors to represent the type in the game, so when their die paths unfold, that monster's advantageous area is what comes out. Some dice will have a crest with a number next to it, and this means if it lands on that crest, it'll give you that many. These are all the basic mechanics of the game, and it's certainly enough to get you started. But I cannot stress enough how much luck is involved in this game since it is literally based on dice rolls. You can try and use monsters with an even spread of crests on the die all you want. You will still spend a whole duel summoning monsters with 0 moving crests, so you'll just stare at each other for upwards of, not kidding, half an hour for one duel. This game is also extremely content light. It seems as though it were developed with the new game design and novelty of facing off against anime and manga characters were enough to justify its purchase. Maybe it was to some, especially at the time since it was released as a launch title for the Game Boy Advance in Japan, and as the 4th Yu-Gi-Oh game ever in the United States, but in looking back it just seems so minuscule in comparison to other games. I couldn't find exact numbers for its sales data, but it seems to have sold very modestly with most of its circulation coming out of the United States, which makes sense as Yu-Gi-Oh fans here were faced with very little choice for their YGO-based game needs. There is also Grandpa's Shop, where Grandpa Moto is giving off some serious Silver Fox energy. My god, Sugoroku, you've been hitting the gym? Got me wildin'. The dice you can buy here are added as you progress through the game and win more battles and tournaments. The Exodia pieces are available for some kind of alternate win condition, I suppose, but these pieces are so expensive, you're better off playing the game for real. Luckily, most dice are relatively well priced for their efficacy in the game. You can trade in battle with friends through use of the Game Boy Advanced Link Cable TM, just like any Yu-Gi-Oh game worth its salt, and this honestly seems like the best way to enjoy the game. Because I tell you what, these computer players are either entirely brain dead or have your number exactly. The game's main progression comes from winning in tournaments. At the start, you have several different tournaments to choose from. Which should you pick? It really doesn't matter. They are all relatively the same difficulty, only changing in the characters that appear in each one. Winning a tournament duel will net you a dice after each one, and then if it was the first time beating that character, they will appear for you to battle in the free duel mode. Beating each tournament once will allow you to progress to the final boss tournament, and beating that one gets you to the next division of tournaments, which also all have their own silly names, as well as added obstacles to the gameplay field. Although, strangely, the game gives you a credit scene after the first world tournament in the first division. It's not like there's a story or anything, but to roll credits after just one division feels like an odd time. This progresses into Division 3, and after that you can be challenged by the king of games himself, Yami Yugi. Feels a little odd that Ryuji Otogi doesn't get the spotlight in this way, considering it's like, you know, the game he made. Pegasus gets to be a final boss character in like 2 of the Duel Monsters games, and we can't even give poor Duke the time of day here? I think that's rude. The game has you face off against, I swear, basically every character that has ever appeared in the manga or anime. This even includes Duke's dad, who's a manga exclusive. But they also invented a few characters for the tournament roster, including Jill the dog. You heard me. An intelligent dog that plays Dungeon Dice Monsters. Get rolled over by an actual canine. Incredible. This game is one of several departures from the game the franchise really focuses on, which is Duel Monsters. But it is important to remember that Yu-Gi-Oh! Began as a serialized story about a different game each week. Kazuki Takahashi loves not only illustration and storytelling, but also inventing cool new games, including the Capsule Monsters game, which we will talk about eventually, I promise. Dungeon Dice Monsters really fits in with the ethos of Duel Monsters, and although a certain cartoon condenser, who made a very popular parody show in 2006, would meme that this game is just like Duel Monsters, it really stands on its own in terms of aesthetic. I don't know that this game is really very good, but it is nice that it got to exist at all, considering how little they would play with the formula as time goes on. But for a game that focuses entirely on the literal roll of a die, it still warrants quite a bit of strategic thinking, and I think that's quite the noble achievement on its own. Our next game is actually one of the games I wanted to start this series for. It was my first time being asked to play the game for real, and it's the first real OCG simulator for the franchise. I'll see you in the next one.